just do it for Miami Dolphins. The pressure, he's in trouble. Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jaylen Waddle. It's a Dolphin touchdown. Throwing deep upfield down the near side. Ran open. Touchdown! Looking deep. He's got a man. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again. Touchdown! Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jaylen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back for another episode as we dive Fin Too Deep. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Neal, Mr. Driscoll. It is, we are 5 days away from the rookies reporting, and we are 12 days away from the veterans reporting, and we are 17 days, so 2.5 weeks away from the first open session of training camp to the fans. It's getting here. How you feeling, bro? Because I know you feel at the end. It's getting here, baby. It's, the Chronicles College just came out, and we're about to see players come out in Don Ross Elite and all that kind of stuff. We're about to see players in uniforms and cards in a couple. It's coming, and Madden's out next month. Football is on the horizon, my friend.
Yeah, it feels real for me because I actually pulled the trigger officially. We'll be at Zach Thomas's Hall of Fame speech. Got everything booked, all the travel and everything is done. So I'm a few weeks away from seeing number 54 get put into Canton, which to me, my second favorite player of all time, is kind of like a lifelong thing. I was there for Marino, was there for JT, got to see the triple head, and then I'll go over the next time when our boy Richmond Webb gets in and Tua gets in, right? So those will be my trips. But yeah, man, it's getting close. We won't have to kind of, emphasize every little story and every little thing that happens because we'll have real football kind of, on the horizon there. So I can't wait, man. Even I've said it on the show multiple times. Like, I'm even really excited for training camp because when you have a roster that's so deep and there's so much talent there, right? Like, there's going to be some real battles, not just for positions, not just for starting positions, but for rosters. And, the Dolphins still have $13 million in cap space to add players, right? So you're going to get to see, do we need a veteran defensive tackle? That's a big question that a lot of people have coming into the season. We'll answer that quickly. Will Dalvin Cook be there, or will it be the running back committee that we see? Like, it's just a lot that's going to happen. So it's like, we kind of weathered the storm, and brought as much good content as we can. Now the content's kind of on a silver platter for us. It's just going to be great. And, I've said it multiple times. This is going to be, I feel like, a special year for Dolphins fans in this community. And, we're a few days for Devin A-Chain going to be the kind of budding superstar that we see early on. And I have a feeling that guy who wears number 1 is going to turn a lot of heads in camp coming up.
Something I wanted to talk about in our opening thoughts here before we get into like the crux of everything and the meat and potatoes. Every time a Dolphin player has been making the list, we've been highlighting, because we did it last year, and it's a list that matters. The ESPN list by Jeremy Fowler. Every day, execs, coaches, and NFL scouts, their lists are coming out of players they're voting on in their top 10. Christian Wilkins like so many other lists, making the honorable mentions and not the top 10, while guys in the top 10 are the ones you're seeing get paid. I mean, you saw Quinnen Williams. Hello. Today was that $24 million a year. We're talking about average annual salary here, right? 4 years, $96 million. So Christian Wilkins, Neal, we were right in terms of the pay gap.
And honestly, the conversation looms, man. Like I think whether we like Christian Wilkins or not, I love him as a football player. Love him. Don't love the price tag that he's going to come at. And I said,
and I think the Dolphins, I've said this. I think the Dolphins are at the point where that, throw out all the lists made by jabroni sitting in their basement working for CBS. That list that Jeremy Fowler, why it has credibility is because actual players, executives, and scouts around the league vote on it.
Right.
And, and a player I wanted to talk about, okay, Christian Wilkins didn't make it. I think that the Dolphins clearly agree with that list, that he falls under the honorable mentions, not in the top 10 like Daron Payton, Dexter Lawrence, and such. But did you see the one that came out today?
Jevon Holland?
No, that was yesterday.
Oh, no, who's today? I didn't see today. I saw Holland.
Tight ends. Did you know who didn't even make the honorable mentions?
Oh, Gesicki, yeah.
Didn't even make the honorable mentions, Neal. And we had people saying we should have bent over backwards, bring him back. He's such a – and what was I constantly saying? But people were getting confused with him being a key cog of this offense, especially in 2021, to where, no, he was getting fed due to the injuries around him, and there was no one else until Waddle came around to supplement that. I mean, hell, Lynn Bowden was even getting a good amount of targets, and he's not even in the league right now, last I checked. All right. So, back in 2020. So, Gesicki's not even making, and, remember Neal last year when he went to tight end university and his boys were trying to hype him up, and we said, he ain't no top 5 tight end. He just wants to get paid right now. Don't sell us that narrative. And Neal.
Well, they're saying he's not even top 15 tight end, right?
The honorable mentions, right?
Well, and honestly, like, look, when someone's a Dolphin, we go to bat for him, right? Like, we probably give him the benefit of the doubt. We try to be objective as we can. For me personally, like, I did think Mike Gesicki 2 years ago was growing to be challenging as a top 10 tight end, but man, when the spotlight was put on him, I don't think one player disappointed me more on the entire Dolphins last year than Mike Gesicki. And we can make whatever reason we can about the blocking and all that stuff and that limited snaps, but at the end of the day, he dropped a lot of freaking balls.
Key balls too. He dropped first downs, right?
And momentum changing balls. And and I also think this about somebody, right? When things aren't going your way, you're not getting the contract you want, you're getting punched in the face. What do? You either fight back or you sit there and cry. And I think Gesicki cried last year, man. He was on the sideline pouting.
Yeah.
He didn't rise to the occasion, and that's why he's only getting $4 million to be a number 2 tight end in New England. And he'll probably get 500 yards receiving and a couple touchdowns. But like the days of looking at him as a premier player in offense, he's going to be a journeyman. That's what I think he's going to be for the rest of his career. He does.
Well, what always pissed me off, Neal, and I brought this up to nauseum at certain points. What always bothered me, Neal, especially because, like, we know what goes on. Plus, talking to Nick privately, hear about the players that go out there and work. It just always bugged me that even, wide receiver 5s and wide receiver 6 and wide receiver 7s would go out and work harder with the receiver group and the quarterback than Gesicki ever would. And that was supposed to be one of Gesicki's, it just feels like, for example, okay, like you look at Braxton Berrios when he got there this year, and you look at Chosen and the work he's put in. These guys, in the short amount of time they've been here, look like they put more work in the offseason to build chemistry with Tua in just a few months than what Gesicki did over a couple years. And like,
absolutely,
what always tapped my ass the wrong way, Neal, was remember that picture that came out in, the 2021 offseason, where it was Tua on the field. He was looking at the iPad with all. He was on the perform field with all the receivers around him. And remember, they were looking at the tablet. You remember that picture that came out? Everyone went wild.
Yeah.
Do you remember at the same time that picture came out, Gesicki posted on Instagram and he was on a yacht
Right.
with his
I remember
girl
that.
and some other people like on, and I'm thinking to myself, like, bro, you should be in the front, like those people around Tua, you should be the first one over his shoulder. I mean, you guys were in 2020 in his rookie season, everyone started getting hurt. You built something with Tua in the season, right? And
Right.
then you kind of never grew off of that, right? Like you never took the next step with your quarterback. And I always attribute it to this guy was just more worried about running through garages and catching footballs over houses and, you know, the color his frost tips would be than getting better and building that rapport with his quarterback and with this offense. I mean, you even see the receivers are building a rapport with each other. It's not just with Tua when they go out. It's a team bonding and chemistry experience. And it just always seemed like, Neal, if he would have hit the big time, it always seems like Gesicki would have been one of those me
Well,
type
look,
of, you know, guy. Diva.
Mike McDaniel comes in town. Tua has the best year of his career. Raheem Mostert has the best year of his career. Jaylen Waddle has the best year of his career. Tyreek Hill's the best year of his career statistically. Mike Gesicki's milk carton. He's on the milk carton.
Good
Like
point.
so to me, honestly, I think it all fell downhill for him week 2 when he blocked me on Twitter. His life as a Miami Dolphin unraveled. That was the only block that he ever made, and it backfired on him. Now, just kidding. Like, but like he's one of those guys because like I think Reason, you probably agree with me. At a time, there was a part where you viewed him as a long-term solution to a position. I did, you know, I put myself on that sword, but I realized early last year that like this guy's not going to meet, like, because the money that like. They weren't even looking at him for $7 million a year for a three-year deal, man. They're not even looking to pay him what they paid Cedric Wilson. Like, that is very, very telling to me.
Put that in perspective, Neal. Good job. Wow.
Right. Like, they didn't even think that Mike Gesicki was worth Cedric Wilson money. And they had a chance to sign him before they had Tyreek too, man, and they still didn't. So I did, and I thought I agree with you on those lists. I actually make sure to read those every day. And I love Jevon Holland. How high he was did catch my eye. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's like a borderline top 5 safety. But what I think helps him in the coaching perspective is his football intelligence.
Yeah.
And that carries a lot of weight out there. Like, the thing I'm blown away about when I watch Jevon Holland is that he last year was the leader of that secondary, meaning he told people where to be.
Yeah.
And I would expect that to be Xavier Howard, and not taking away. Xavier Howard's a good leader and the young guys gravitate him. I'm just saying that Jevon Holland's ahead of his years. He's the guy that Flores tried to make Minkah Fitzpatrick. And he wasn't willing to be.
And one of my comps of him, you know, I rarely ever do comps. My comp of him coming out when he was coming out of Oregon. So I told everyone he reminded me of prime Jamal Adams with the Jets and how they use him like a chess piece. And, you know, I've talked about this. You know, I feel like when Ramsey came out here and said there's multiple players that can play that star role, Jevon Holland is a guy who can play the boundary, the slot, in the box. He can play single high up on the perch. He can play anywhere. I think Trill Williams can fall into that category. And eventually, I think Cam Smith can fall into that category. I think with some more work on the boundary, Kader Kohu is a guy who might be able to fall in that category eventually. You know, but you look at Jevon Holland. Jevon Holland is a guy, and that, like, you listen to Fangio gush about Jevon Holland. Like, he gushed. And I said this too, Neal. Listen, I'm going to pitch this to you because, I've said this to EM privately. I said this to—Richmond and ball game yesterday before we get into everything here. I sat there a couple nights ago, Neal, and I said, who do I see here in 5 years? Who are they telling us right now they see here in 5 years? And there's only 5 names I could come up with, Neal. Tua,
right?
If he stays out, but he's the only one that's shady because he's got to stay healthy.
Waddle.
And then, right? Waddle, right?
Phillips.
Okay. Jalen Phillips, Jevon Holland, and Kader Kohu. No one else right now. Robert Hunt, they're saying contract year. We haven't even had negotiations with you. Play it out. When me and you would probably agree he should be here in 5 years. Me and you could agree with that, but they're not telling us that, right? So that's what, you know, Raheem Mostert, our whole running, other than Devin Achane. But even Devin Achane, he doesn't have a 5th-year option. He's only under a 4-year deal.
4 years. So
if he doesn't pop off, he ain't here in 5 years. All right. Look at our receiver room. Like we just mentioned, as a comment on under, you know, there's no one other than Waddle, right? Tight end room, no one. You know, Connor Williams, nope. Teron Armstead's not going to be here in 5 years, right? Because of age. You know, Austin Jackson, we don't know what he's going to be. flip to the defense. Brandon Jones, we don't know what he's going to be when he comes back from injury, and he's not a surety. Deshaun Elliott and David Long aren't under long-term things. Jerome Baker and Xavier Howard might be out this year. In 5 years, age is probably going to catch up with Jalen Ramsey. He might be gone by then. Tristan Wilkins, I don't think he's going to be here in 5 years. Hell, he might not even be here in 1 year is what they're telling us right now.
Right.
Zach Sealer, we don't know how that's going to play out, right? They haven't even had negotiations because that would probably be disrespectful to Christian Wilkins if they went there. Chubb ain't going to be here in 5 years. Ogba ain't. Do you see where I'm going here?
Right.
It actually puts it in perspective. Neil, that might be another reason why they're not jumping the gun at paying no 20+ million, because they're saying on the defense, Jevon, Holland, and Jalen Phillips are the guys we got to worry about long-term, Christian. Because especially in this defense, Fangio might be here for the next 5 years. And who's more key to him? Jalen Phillips and Jevon Holland or Christian Wilkins?
Yeah, I think that, on an upcoming show, you and I could have a forum about Christian Wilkins and spend probably a whole show on it, because I will say this, where I stand is I love the player. I hate the price tag.
So do I.
And what you just
right
outlined,
there with you, brother.
That 2021 draft class, right? So like when I do my draft grades, the highest praise I can give you is that I think you're a elite franchise player, which means that you're top 5 in your position in football in 2 to 3 years. And then the next one is franchise, when you're a top 10 player in your position. We might have walked away of 2021 with 3 elite franchise type of players where, like, I will say this, because I think getting Tua in the 2020 draft was all that mattered. And if he's healthy and he's the franchise quarterback, sure, Noah sucks and Austin sucks, and we could sit there and play revisionist theories, and we could come up with 150 people at each of those draft picks that were better players. But I don't give a shit as long as we got Tua, because I still think Robert Hunt, Brandon Jones, and Raekwon Davis on day 2 is really quality players. But that 2021 draft has the potential to be, I know people will say 83 with Marino, and I agree he's the best player in franchise history, and that's a steal where we got him in the draft. But to get 3 players of this caliber that are like, they're the nucleus to this football team. That's why I always say to people that the window has kind of 2 phases. And phase 1 is with Tyreek, Ramsey, Terron Armstead, and those guys. And phase 2 is with these 3 players. Because, like, look, honestly, Waddle, to me, we'll talk about it all season. I think he's going to be the most productive player in this offense this year. Jalen Phillips is going to be the superstar breakout player. And the cool thing about Jevon Holland is he's going to be Mr. Steady for the next 10 years, where that's the best compliment you can give a safety. A guy who just doesn't get his name called all the time because he does his role. You call his name only when he gets turnovers. That game against Baltimore 2 years ago, remember when we did the space and we said the sky was falling, and well, especially me, and then he went out there and hit Lamar Jackson on the sideline and set the tone for that game. That's when I realized that Jevon Holland wasn't just a really, really good football player, that he was a great player, because he was calling out that complicated Ravens running game and aligning defenders where to go. And he was right 8 out of 10 times, man. And that is doing your homework. That is what made Ed Reed so damn good. And I'm not comparing Jevon Holland to Ed Reed as much as I love him. But, man, when Ed Reed would watch football tape and he would be like, I purposely faked where I was going here so Peyton would make that throw so he'd come back to it in clutch time, and then I would take it. And I'm just like, that kind of mindset and approach to football, that is unmeasurable in the game.
Dude, so patreon.com/Phinside the NFL. You can go subscribe there. On my latest episode of 3 Takes, I just said something you just alluded to. Because when we do our preseason panel with Dougley and everyone, Neil, I'm going to ask you guys, pick your breakout player of the year. Well, spoiler alert, while everyone's picking Jalen Phillips, who I agree with and who I've said too, what if it's Jalen Waddle? And people are going to say, well, Reason, he already broke out last year. Well, yeah, I agree, but there's another level still. What if that hand-eye coordination he said he's been working out gets him to 12, 13 touchdowns? Now he's in the double-digit touchdowns. And what if, it's 1,356 yards last year? What if he breaks over 1,500 this year? That's another level of a breakout. What if he starts to really make it look like, oh shit, Tyreek is about to become the Robin to Waddle's Batman in another year here. And this is the year where he starts to plant the flag down and say, okay, this is the year where we look back and say, this is where the room started to transition into Waddle's room. This could be that year. People are just focusing on Jalen Phillips, but Waddle has a couple other levels to him, I think. You know what I mean?
I can't agree more. If I was doing a fantasy football draft, Madden style, and I was on the clock and I had the chance to take a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle for my team today,
yeah,
I'd still take Jalen Waddle over Tyreek Hill because of the age difference. But I think the ceiling, what we have with Waddle, we're just starting to get to it, man. Did you see the thing Matt Harmon did with the breakdown of his routes and the separation he was creating? Like, I don't know if you saw that video, man. It is incredible how much separation that this dude counts on 12-yard routes where he can get people 4 yards away from him. You're talking running 12 yards and somebody literally is 33% away from you. Like, that is incredible to do.
Bro, and you see how he's been working on his release? It's going to get even better, Neil. And he's strengthening up, so if you're going to press him, you can fight through it. See, I always talk about this. What people sleep on with Jalen Waddle, I saw some guy trying to be an analyst and, pop up. And when I mentioned this about one of the things I like better about Waddle when you compare to Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, people just see quick feet. But the footwork is freaking elite, bro. The footwork is elite when he gets out of his breaks, when he heads into his breaks, his release off the line. The footwork, he can cut on a dime and send, and just the way he cuts, and the guy can cut but not lose a step, not lose a hair of his speed, not have to decelerate. See, one of the things I've always said about Waddle and what separates him from fast guys, and Tyreek can do this too, they can play at 4.2 speed. They're not just 4.2 guys. It's one thing when you're just, 4.2 run it vert, like McCall Hardman or like someone like that, or what's his face, Tyler Boyd, whatever. Like these guys are not built like Jalen Waddle, and they're different freaking breeds, bro. And what I've always said about Jalen Waddle too, my comp for him coming out, when you looked at Alabama receivers, I said, if you look at him, the reason why he's the best of them was because he was Devontae Smith, his route running ability, and Henry Ruggs' speed combined. Like, that's literally one of the things you saw from this guy. Like, and look at, even before he got injured in that in that final year, sorry, not a senior year, the junior year at Alabama, bro, he was crushing Devontae Smith in yards per catch. He was like almost 20 yards per catch, yards per catch. He was disgusting. And now he's turning into an 18-yard per catch guy at the NFL. Do people not realize how ridiculous it is in today's NFL day and age with the elite level athletes in the secondary, how crazy it is to average 18 yards per catch? You need the elite separator, like Neil just pointed out. And again, we just talked about Ed Reed. Another thing with him is he's elite football IQ. He knows how to use that speed in open space. He just doesn't get in open space and run. He knows how to use angles. He understands defenders' angles and and the ways defenders can track him, and he outsmarts them, and he uses his speed to out-angle them. He's a very smart player, bro. People don't give him enough credit for what he does up here.
And he's probably, out of any of those Alabama receivers that have come out in the last decade, the toughest of all of them. He's the toughest dude, like Holland. So, like, to your point, the craziest thing is that there's a portion of this.
He's the best since Calvin Ridley came out.
Yeah, and I think he'll be a better pro overall than
he will be. He'll be longer.
There's a portion of our fan base that is upset because he dropped one pass in a playoff game off of his pads. Like, it's like that's what you focus on, is the one negative when this guy over 2 years.
Bro, I've been going to war. Scotty Joe just said, reason sounds like just before we drafted him now. If y'all were here on that draft day, Clumpty Dumpty was up here, and I actually laughed in his face because I'd gone to war with him and that clown, not so smart guy, James, or whatever. I call him not so smart guy.
Yeah, what happened to him? I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, I call him not so smart guy because he doesn't know anything. He's just a guy out here throwing PFF stats thinking he knows ball. And I was getting in an argument. They were, Devontae Smith is, remember Clumpty Dumpty tweeted out, if it's going to be, they're going to regret if they take Jalen Waddle. He's not I had this, like, everyone has that thing has seen that tweet, how wrong he was on that stuff. Remember, that was the same guy who said Davis Webb was going to be a stud coming out. That was his number one quarterback prospect out of that class. Yeah, you remember Webb?
Oh, no, Webb from Cal Poly. Poly.
Yeah. Remember the bust? Remember?
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah. That was Clumpty Dumpties in that class, bro. And you remember the quarterbacks that were in that class, right? So, anyways, my whole point is I've been going to war with Jaylen Waddle since before the draft. I came out of my Twitter non-war peace treaty a couple weeks ago to go to war for him against Ja'Marr Chase, because I will continue. He is better than Ja'Marr. And I saw your list. I got a bone to pick with you too, bro. Tell me how Ja'Marr Chase, after what you saw from last season, is a better receiver than Jaylen Waddle right now, please.
No, I think that at times Ja'Marr Chase has just been more dominant. And
his rookie season, that's it.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately for
and
Waddle
that's because he had Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. But I had
Jaylen Waddle's like, hit me on my 5-yard curl, and the whole freaking defense was collapsing on him because there was no one else to throw to.
He had impressive stats as a rookie, no doubt. But our offensive coordinator at the time, damn, I'm drawing a blank. I can't even remember who our offensive coordinator was. Under Flores.
What, the last year wasn't that the Godsville?
Oh yeah. The what's it called? The committee.
Yeah, idiots.
Yeah, like the thing about it is they kind of, even though he put up good stats, they kind of wasted Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah, they did.
They turned him into
they didn't know how to use him.
They made him a glorified possession guy. I with that on the same thing in that list. That's kind of it was my heading into the season. I think Waddle has the potential to make the biggest jump on the list.
Well, I just say this, Neil, because here's my thing. This is what I've been arguing with people, because I hear, Ja'Marr Chase, he missed like 4 or 5 games last year. I said, okay. Ja'Marr Chase had more targets,
right?
More catchable balls thrown his way. I don't get where we're going with this. He had more targets. He had more receptions, and Jaylen Waddle blew him out of the water. Though it wasn't even close in terms. The only thing he had one more touchdown than Jaylen Waddle.
You know my plan in 3 years when Tyreek rides off in the sunset, right? Allocate that money, bring in Ja'Marr Chase, and have the Chase and Waddle show, man. That's my plan.
I don't think he's ever. I think Tua's going to be with. I think Tua and Waddle are going to be together as long as they want to, and I think Chase and Burrow will be together as long as they want to.
I'll say the only thing is the Bengals are such a weird franchise, man. They weird. Like, I agree.
They'll let Higgins go before. Don't let Higgins go.
But that's where I'm saying, like, a team like the Bengals, right?
I think Joe Mixon's actually the next one to get.
Well, he's good, but when Higgins goes, that offense takes a major step back. A major step back. And I honestly think that they have this year as their window for the Bengals, and then they're going to go. I mean, I don't know. Their division's kind of interesting. There's a lot of things out there. Like, I don't believe in Kenny Pickett, so
either do I at all.
I'll get a lot of shit for that. But why? There's a lot of people that think.
Can you believe his card market, Neil?
Yeah, I do not like Kenny Pickett. I think he's holding the Steelers back. I think they actually have a playoff roster with a
Sam Howell will be a better pro than Kenny Pickett. Desmond Ridder has a better chance, I think.
Yeah, I think the Bengals are interested. But, like, hey man, Waddle's the man. I mean, to have him, I can't believe there's people in our fan base that are unhappy with what he's done here. Like, that, my favorite play, honestly, of football last year was that touchdown against the Packers. That was my favorite play.
Dude, people are just nitpicking. You know what it was? You know who the loudest people were? Were all those all those people who were pushing Skylar Thompson as QB1 when he dropped that pass in the Bills game, in the playoff game.
Yep.
All the Thompson pushers came out like, oh, Waddle's trash, blah, 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 blah. Like, those were the ones who got loud. Sure, even he knows he needs to improve on it, but that kid's he's a special player, man. People need to realize.
I mean, that's the thing. One mistake does not outweigh what someone's done. I hate when that's like the philosophy. When the bar is perfection, you'll never be happy. Like it's just not for me, man. It's not a good way to live life or be a fan. It's just like, that's not like the best part about life. When I hire people and I look for people, I want people that are fucking battle tested, that are scrappy, that that been through some stuff, man. Those are the kind of people I look for. Like, I like people that have resilience and have to overcome bad things. Like Jaylen Waddle to me is a franchise player. You go to bed at night thinking that you have a player like that because there was a time where our best receivers were James McKnight and Aronde Gadsden. And I love Gadsden actually, but like
It's true.
we're talking a whole different level of talent here, man. This is better than the Marx brothers, what we have right now. Some of the older heads will be upset for me saying that. I grew up in the 80s, so I'll speak to that. I think Waddle and Hill are better than the Marx brothers 10 out of 10 times.
I agree with that. I think they're going to go down if they stay together for another 2 years. I think they'll probably go down as, arguably the best duo. That's, I think that's a real possibility, bro. Look what they did in year one. They were just over 100 yards away from breaking the record.
What is considered the best? Is it Carter and Randy Moss in Minnesota that year when they blew up with Culpepper? Or I mean, with Cunningham?
Are we talking about who's considered the best or who has the most yards ever?
Who's considered it right now? I would it be Moss and it's got to be Moss and Carter, or John Taylor and Jerry Rice in their primes. Yeah,
those would probably be the two best. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think isn't it was statistically when you get into the best, I have it here. I think isn't it like let me bring it up here.
I would have to think that when you have a player of the caliber, Tyreek's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Waddle's on his way there. I mean,
the most yards ever were Herman Moore and Brett Perriman.
I remember that Scott Mitchell, right?
And and this would be actually I think this would be in the top three too. Would be Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce.
Oh yeah, that's up there.
Yeah, that's up there. They had 3,106 yards. We were Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle were only 40 yards off of Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce in year one.
They'll beat that this year with Tua healthy.
Yeah. And they were only 108 yards off from Herman Moore and Brett Perriman.
Yeah.
Breaking the record.
Wow.
And you know what's crazy? They could break that record and Chosen could still put up like 800 or 900 yards. That's actually like realistic. Like crazy, isn't it? And then Braxton chipping in for like 400 and then Durham Smythe and Eric Saubert, hovering around 200 each, 150 yards each. There's a clear, easy path to 5,000. I'm just saying, bro.
I know. I feel like we should have like
he stays healthy.
In Major League when their team they have the owner and they kind of take a piece of clothing off every time or whatever. That was like their thing when they did whatever they got closer. I'm not saying to take any clothes off, but I have that life-size cutout of Tua. I want to think of a unique way to track his 5,000 yards on that.
Yeah,
that Party City the life-size cutout of Tua that takes up way too much room in my house.
I see people are talking about in the chat. I gotta watch that first episode of QB on Netflix. It's just dropped.
I've heard a lot of people say it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it tonight. The wife's going out for a bit, so I'll order some Uber Eats. Hey, a little dabby do and a little dabby do, and then watch that.
I'm watching Master Chef catch up night tonight. Like that's
attaboy. Little Chef Ramsay for your night.
Yeah, we're big Gordon Ramsay fans at the house.
He's the man, bro. I love his. What was it called? I always watch because you can find the full episodes pretty easily, even on YouTube. The Kitchen Nightmare stuff. I love from him.
Love it.
Love it.
Kitchen, all of it. I watch all
of
it. Man. We're Gordon. That's the only show the wife and I really watch. We watched the show Jury Duty together, which was I think it was Amazon special, which is if you haven't seen it,
I haven't watched it. No,
it's like 8 episodes. It's
Lasso
awesome.
Just ended. We used to watch that together.
We're starting that together, but we don't. Usually look. I literally watch every
Yellowstone. We watch Yellowstone together.
I haven't done it because I literally
watch
Orioles, Capitals. I don't miss games, man. Like I don't even
but I make time for the wife. We'll watch it even after if it's like a day or two late. We'll watch it.
Yeah,
we don't have to watch that stuff live. We stream it all anyways, right?
Oh yeah, that's what we do. Catch up.
I love that show. Have you watched that show on Apple, Severance?
I have not, but I've heard good things.
Bro, like Secret Invasion. She didn't want to keep watching, so I watched it myself. We watched The Witcher together. Yeah, there's a tons of shows we actually now to think about that we watch. Anyways, let's get into this. Let's start off. Before we get into our training camp battles for everyone to watch, I want to talk about something on Jason McIntyre when he was on the Herd. And, is Tua, how big of a necessity is it that Tua improves against playoff teams. I'm going to play this clip here, the audio of it. Tua against non-playoff teams, he's 16-4. Against playoff teams, he's 5-9. Now, we know that record should be better if the defense showed up against Buffalo last year and, et cetera, in that second game. If, I don't know, he didn't get a concussion against Cincinnati all of a sudden. No, so there's context to this a little bit to these playoff team games, but I want to get your thoughts on this. I'm going to play this clip, and let's hear your thoughts on it.
Really set up right now. I just saw another media outlet had the Miami Dolphins having the 4th best roster heading into this NFL season. 4th! I was stunned. Ahead of San Francisco, ahead of Cincinnati, ahead of my beloved Jets.
Yeah.
And you start to look around at the Dolphins, you're like, man, a lot of noise. They got added Jalen Ramsey. Bradley Chubb is back coming off the edge. Tyreek Hill. They've got Jaylen Waddle. This team is loaded offensively. And then comes Tua. But the reality is Tua gains 10, 15 pounds. He'll go from, 217 to 230? So he's just going to land harder when he gets ragdolled behind that terrible offensive line. Let me remind people, I know they're rebuilding it for the 3rd straight year. Pass block win rate is a stat that, some of these advanced metric guys came up with. Miami's offensive line ranked 24th in the league last year. And I've got a Tua stat. I'm gonna hit you with it in a second that you're not going to be happy with. It's weird. Tua, we're hearing Mike Vick talk about bulking up. Earlier this season, it was Tua is learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu so he can land better when he gets ragdolled. It was weird. One of the producers this morning was like, geez, is Tua auditioning for John Wick 5? What's going on? He's bulking up and he's working on Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So essentially, we're hearing everything about Tua except, the pressure in Miami where he's in the toughest division in the NFL. The Jets, my beloved Jets, have added Aaron Rodgers. Okay? The Patriots now have an offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien, the genius. He's going to solve and fix Mac Jones. And the Buffalo Bills, listen, I don't love the Buffalo Bills.
What does this guy think
got some Josh Allen thoughts coming up. But they won 13 games last year. They were pretty damn good. All of the pressure in the world is on Tua. And, by the way, I'm sure you guys have followed. He was in that quarterback draft where Burrow went 1. Herbert was drafted right ahead of Tua. All we're hearing about Herbert this offseason and Joe Burrow is, hey, did you see Joe Burrow at that big party in the Hamptons over the weekend? Hollywood Joe living it up with Beyonce and all the cool people. And Justin Herbert, just how much money is he going to get? How big are they going to go for Justin Herbert, the great quarterback, who, by the way, says nothing? He's the best dull interview you will find. No storylines with Justin Herbert. And what's his money number going to be? Because everybody is looking at Tua going into his final year and not knowing how much money he's going to get paid. So Tua not only has the pressure where his star wide receiver, Tyreek Hill's like, yeah, he's got to bulk up, gain a little weight. Him and Mike Vick agree. Tua's good. He's the missing Jenga piece to the puzzle. So Tua's got to gain weight. He's got to fall better. He's got to carry the 4th best roster in the league. I just want to remind Miami Dolphins fans, the last time you won a playoff game was over 2 decades ago. The futility in Miami is comical. No pressure, Tua. Hey, you just got to land better, be heavier, carry this bad historically team that has a great roster. And, by the way, if you do it and stay healthy, you're going to get paid. And don't bother looking over your shoulder. The guy they got from the Jets, your backup quarterback, Mike White, he's only, I think, started something like 7 games in his career, but he's been pretty damn good in a few of them. But you don't have to worry about him because you're going to stay healthy, right? I got a lot of questions for Tua. I'm a little concerned about him. And these stats, I'll hammer it home with this, folks. Our crack team here at the Herd came up with a pretty amazing stat. So Tua's put up a lot of good numbers in his career. Are you ready for this? Tua, look at this, folks. Against non-playoff teams, it's like Tua playing at Alabama going against Directional University State. Okay? He's carving them up. 16-4. Look at these numbers. Staggering. And then Tua faces playoff teams. And did you see what happened down the stretch last year? Struggled against the Packers. Interceptions galore on Christmas Day. Struggled against the Niners. Struggled in those pivotal 4 games right in December. Winning time. And he could not deliver. The numbers don't lie. The passer rating falls off a cliff. The interceptions up. Folks, Tua, all the pressure in the world, and he's struggled a bit against the good playoff teams. I'm a little worried about him. Listen, I'm rooting for Tua. I've said that many times on the show. I'm not a Dolphins fan, but I do root for Tua. He's a good story. But, folks, This is going to be a tough one for Tua if things go sideways in Miami this season. Miami is really set up right now. I just saw another media outlet.
Okay, so
Oh man, I'm like foaming. So
yeah, hold on a sec. Hold on. So the stats that he's talking about, Tua is 16-4 against non-playoff teams. He has a 71.1 completion percentage. He has 34 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and he has a 104.4 passer rating. Against playoff teams, he's 5-9 with the 57.5 completion percentage, 18-12 touchdown interception ratio, and he has an 80.8 passer rating. Okay. First of all, he can say he's rooting for Tua all he wants, but it's clearly he's a biased Jets fan. But Neil, you're foaming. You go, then I'll rip into him after you because I know you want to let him have it.
yeah, well, look, Jason McIntyre is that dude that has the lifted truck because he's a little dude. He's got short man little syndrome, and he has to jump up in his truck and make him feel good about himself. A lot of stuff he said, first of all, he doesn't have a PhD, so he has no knowledge about adding weight and falling, just like I don't. So I'm not going to comment on it, but it's a thing. Sure, he's 16-4 against bad teams, but in the NFL, you got to beat the bad teams like you got to beat the good teams. Oh, and by the way, in those 16 wins, he's 4-0 against the Jets, if we're counting too, right? So those Jets that you love never beat them so much. The Dolphins' offensive line that he called trash was ranked 23rd by Warren Sharp, who's probably a top 10 football mind, and the Jets were, 24th? Last time I checked, I think 23 comes before 24, Jason. So let me help you out there. Oh, and you want to crap on us for taking Tua Tagovailoa in the draft that has Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. How's Zach Wilson working out for the Jets? Right? Justin Fields looks pretty damn good. He looks like he's hanging in there. How's Zach Wilson? Oh, and you want to talk about Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback in the regular season. That guy's one of the biggest choke artists that's ever walked this planet. He had way more talent on the Packers last year. Couldn't even take the team into the playoffs. Like Aaron Rodgers, sure, give him MVPs, and he's a great regular season quarterback. But let's not act like he's a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning type champion that plays his best football when it matters in the postseason by any means. So, after all that, sure, like I'd like to see Tua play better against every damn team he plays. The thing about football is the other team tries too. It's not like you just set the mode on rookie and you go run whatever you want and you throw 80-yard bombs all day. Like, sure, I'll judge Tua mostly off of last year because I think there's a lot of constraints that happened previously with coaching, system, scheme. I think what we saw last year is for half the season, a guy who was probably the best, if not the best, a top 3 quarterback in football. Sure, he did have availability issues that have been well established. I would say that Chargers game, he didn't play great, but he wasn't the sole factor they lost. Against the 49ers with that defense, I actually think Tua played well enough for us to win that football game. I think this is rival fans taking a stab at the Dolphins because their roster was ranked higher. You look at the Dolphins roster, right? I'll say quarterback. I'll even give them, if they want to feel good about Rodgers being better all time than Tua, sure. Is he better right now? I don't think so.
No.
But their running back room after Dalvin Cook is here won't be better than ours. Their wide receiver room, their best receiver that they gloat and act like the man, Garrett Wilson, who's a good player, he'd be our wide receiver 3 if we're being honest, right? Yeah. Our offensive line's better than theirs. Our defensive line, even though they have Quinn Williams, is better than theirs. They might have a better linebacker core. Their secondary is not better than ours, and they're going to lose to us twice this year. Yeah, they're going to lose to us twice this year. And their corner, instead of putting in works in a chat room fighting with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and DJ Reed or whatever the hell. So like the Jets, to me, like I can't wait to see the Jets fans crumble this year because Aaron Rodgers has got a cap hit over $100 million for them next year. Now they paid Big Quinnen. Like this team only has a 1-year window.
Here's my thing too, right? Like, I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers guy. I love Aaron Rodgers, but I'll be the first to admit it took a concussion to Tua last year for Aaron Rodgers to even get on Tua's level. Tua was freaking blowing him out of the water until that concussion. Like it wasn't even close to the better guy was on the field. Okay. That's number one. Number two, I mean, you heard this guy, I'm rooting for Tua, but I'm not a Dolphin fan. My friend.
You're right.
Name the last time the Jets had a quarterback on Tua's level, because the current Aaron Rodgers is not on Tua's level from last year. I mean, if they would have had Tua instead of Mark Sanchez on those teams, they could have actually maybe beat Tom Brady and won a freaking Super Bowl. So, When have the Jets even sniffed a quarterback as good as what we have right now? But he's out here talking like he's the authority and he knows what a good quarterback is. But they'll be the first one to talk about, oh, we haven't had a good one back there since Joe Namath. How long ago was that? Oh, by the way, went to the same school. Okay. Now, let's talk about this for a second. How is he blown away by us having the fourth best roster over my beloved Jets?
Yeah.
Crazy right now, like Neal just pointed out, the only unit defensively you can even make the argument you're better than us at is the second level. The linebacking, the interior linebackers. If you want to talk about linebacking core and include outside linebackers, our edge rushers,
not even close.
Then we beat you. I mean, what are we talking about here? And
CJ Mosley will be hurt by midseason like he is every year and sitting on the collecting big checks, not playing.
Offensively, until Davin's here, the only thing I'll give them a nod on is they got a better running back than we do. But A-Chain, if he turns into what I think he's going to turn into, I'm not worried. I'll put him over Breece Hall in a year or two when he gets those football legs under him.
Let's be honest, man. Breece Hall was good for 3 weeks of a football season. Like everyone acts,
and then he got hurt. Well, I was a huge fan of him.
Yeah, me too. But like you can't Tua was better longer than in football at an MVP level last year than Breece Hall even played, and they're anointing Breece Hall as the next Barry Sanders.
And I think we're gonna hurt their special teams by taking Braxton.
Oh, and coaching. Like, there's not a planet than Robert Saleh's even in the ballpark.
Or LaFleur's on McDaniels. And LaFleur's not on McDaniels.
When he was rumored to be our defensive coordinator that we were interested, I wasn't sleeping at night, man.
Yeah,
I wasn't sleeping at night when I thought that guy could have been our defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I get pissed. I get pissed when I hear stuff like that, man, just because it lacks context and it lacks knowledge. It's a guy who's a Jets fan who barely watches the Dolphins and just think, and at the end of the day, are you measured off playoff wins? The last time the Jets won a Super Bowl was 1969. I mean, that's a long time away too. We've won 2 since then. Like if the goalposts are going to stay the same, like don't change the narrative to make you feel better and try to find ways that you're better than the franchise. There's not a mind in the world that would say the Jets are a better franchise than the Miami Dolphins. The Jets are, they gave up on a number 2 overall quarterback to get Aaron Rodgers in for 1 year.
Yes or no, though? Dude, does Tua need to improve against playoff teams?
Sure. He needs to play better football later in the season. And, he's got to keep himself on the field because I truly believe that Tua did hit a rough patch late in the season. The unfortunate part is that he wasn't available to come back from that because the one thing that Tua does all the time is come back better than ever. I don't give a shit if Tua has 2 or 3 bad football games over the course of a season. Like that's what people do. Like, sure, Pat Mahomes probably doesn't do that, but like every other quarterback in football struggles at times. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Look, Josh Allen gets to the playoffs and he looks like he doesn't belong there. Yeah. We got to be consistent in this, but I know the Jets fans are excited about Aaron Rodgers. They were excited like this for Brett Favre. You remember back in 2008 too. Like, let the story play out. But honestly, the Jets to me, I did my season predictions and I don't even have the Jets as a playoff team.
All right, let's keep it rolling here because we still got a couple things to go through. Let's get into our training camp battles here.
Fun.
My guy actually didn't put our honorable mentions on here, so we'll just have to tell the people what the honorable mentions are here. So we'll start off with 5 for each of us, but let's start off with the honorable mentions. For honorable mentions, you had, I believe it was Michael Turk against Jake Bailey, and I had Deshaun Elliott versus Brandon Jones. Let's start off with you with Turk versus Bailey as your honorable mention. Just go over it briefly because we'll get into the
I'm not going to spell out. Michael Turk was a guy that I thought was a really good undrafted free agent signing, but Jake Bailey can boom it, and I think like as much as I thought Michael Turk had the advantage, I think Jake Bailey's going to win the job outright. But I think it's going to be a tough competition. I don't think it's going to be a layup. And for me personally, I like that because we've had some dud punters here over the last few years. So I even think Michael Turk could be a practice squad candidate as a punter.
Yeah, if he gets there. I like that too. Yeah, I agree. So for me with Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones, because you'll get into it because it's on your actual list.
Right.
For me, I'm just going to say, where I look at it with the interesting angle for that I'm looking at it is Deshaun Elliott was clearly a Fangio call while, you're looking over here at you know, Brandon Jones. We don't know what he's going to be like coming after the injury, and we really don't know where he sits in with Fangio, because Fangio did mention, and I know people have written articles about it and always pointed back to how he said we need to find, talent in other positions. I think he was talking about interior linebacker personally, but yeah, that's an interesting battle to me. So let's start off with 5. I've got a triple threat matchup, while you've got a tight end matchup.
Right.
So let's start off with you. You got Eric Saubert versus Durham Smythe as your 5th training camp battle to watch.
Yeah, I think that the tight end is the weakest position on this roster.
Agreed.
I think Durham is a guy that is a great team guy. He does a lot of little things, checks the boxes. But look, he lacks a lot of dynamicism as a pass catcher, and I think Saubert will bring that to the table. I think it's going to be interesting because Durham will be in line a lot, and he'll have that role. But when it becomes those passing downs and you need that tight end seam threat, I think Saubert's going to be the guy. I think they got him for a really good value when they signed him. I think they complement each other quite well. So when you go out there, the starter is probably going to be Durham Smythe. But when the bullets start flying and the passes are thrown, I think the guy who's going to be on the receiving end more so than Smythe will be Saubert.
And I got the triple threat matchup. AVG versus Duke Riley, Channing Tindall. Neil, who's our interior LB3? Someone tell me who's going to pull away. You got Channing Tindall. Is he going to pick up the playbook? Is he going to take a step forward? Because from what we were hearing about the Underwear Olympics, wasn't looking too promising. Duke Riley, he's a special team specialist. Andrew Van Ginkel, he's transitioning. If you ask me reason, who are you putting your money on? I'm putting my money on AVG right now, because me and EM have been talking about the transition online on YouTube and privately for years now. AVG, this is a very interesting battle for me. Who's going to come away as that interior linebacker 3? And the reason why it matters so much to me, Neil, David Long. Right, we don't know soft tissue injuries. He's already missing some time when the shorts and the shirts are on. What happens when the pads go on? So, interior linebacker 3 is actually a position that can have ramifications at certain points of this season. So, this is a very interesting battle to me of who is going to solidify themselves in that spot, because it matters. So, we'll go to 4 here. I'll start off. You got him on your list, a spot higher. Braxton Berrios versus Robbie Chosen. And then you've got at 4, Emmanuel Ogbah versus the defensive line. So for me, with Braxton Berrios and Robbie Chosen, if you would have asked me before Robbie was signed, I told everyone, hey, Braxton's going to be wide receiver. Hell, even when Robbie was originally signed, I said Braxton's going to run away with it. And then as time's progressed, as the chemistry's built up, as we've heard reports come out of camp from people publicly and people we talk to privately, it's clear as day Robbie Chosen is locked in at 3 right now. I think Braxton's still going to give him a good run for the money when the pads come on, because they offer you, right? Chosen can take you vertically, whereas Braxton's going to take you horizontally and underneath, but Chosen can also add that too, has that element too. I think Chosen can give you boundary or slot options, where you look at Braxton, he's more of a slot guy. So I think this is going to be a really fun battle to watch. Really excited to see this one play out. I think, Yadin is a comment, it's the 5th guy. You're talking about a potentially very, very, very deep wide receiver room, and give yourself the Birdman hand rub, because it's going to be exciting to watch. And, Braxton Berrios, he's going to have his work cut out for him too, because he's going to be probably a contributor on special teams as well. Right. So that's a very good wide receiver 3 battle, if I may add, because you got Braxton, who, if he locks in wide receiver 3, could have a career year, or you got Robbie, who, if he locks in wide receiver 3 behind Tyreek and behind Jaylen, he could have a renaissance year. So very, very interesting angles to take on those battles. And you've got a really good one here. Ogbah versus the defensive line, Neil. Go into that one and tell me where you're coming from for that, because defensive line is a broad term, my friend.
Well, I think heading into the season, the starters are going to be Wilkins, Seiler, and Raekwon Davis. And if you have a guy making $17 million cap hit and he's not starting, that raises some eyebrows. Now, I think Emmanuel Ogbah was a really good football player, and honestly, I think he's probably as good as Zach Seiler. But you can't take Zach Seiler out with the mojo he's been playing with, man, and the chemistry that he has with that defensive line. So I think that Ogba's going to be relegated to a situational $17 million a year player, which is why I think it's foreshadowing to think that this is going to be his swan song in Miami. But I do think during pass rush downs, you'll probably see Ogba get on the field more. He swats those balls down, got those long arms. But like, it's kind of even crazy to think that at one point, Emmanuel Ogba was a foundational piece of this rebuild.
Yep.
Now he's kind of just the fourth wheel on the date of the starting defensive lineman.
Very much so. That's and the other thing too is that's got to play into that, Neil. Fangio's clearly a huge fan of Ogba too, right? That's been established. So, does he have that on his side? So it's gonna be interesting. Number 3 battle. I'll let you start off. You got Braxton Berrios versus Chosen Anderson. I've got Mike White versus Skylar Thompson. So let's start off with you, Braxton versus Chosen. How do you see this battle playing out, and what angles are you looking at it from?
You covered it really well, man. I think Chosen Anderson, when you look back at this season, is going to be one of the best values of the offseason sign-ins. And, I think all those Chris Greer detractors take note here. This could be a huge dividend signing. But I think it's a good problem. When you have this as your 3-4, you mentioned Uzakama, we might have a situation where Cedric Wilson's our 6 wide receiver, and there's teams that he would probably be the 3. So you think about the depth to this room, and then they all bring a little bit different to the table. So I think it's really cool because, when you're playing, a team and you're looking to kind of beat them by death by 1,000 paper cuts, maybe you see a little bit more of Berrios. When you have those teams that are stacking the box a little bit, you want to take the roof off, maybe you throw in a little Chosen. Like, I think it's just such a dynamic approach. And of course, the Dolphins headlines are always going to be with Tyreek and Waddle, which is, it makes sense. They're two of the best receivers on the planet. But man, these moves they made to kind of complete this room, I mean, it is just such a balanced receiving room that you have to be excited about what it could do. You can't cover everybody.
It's true. Cap for Life says, I think he meant very, very interesting with a bunch of emoji. I appreciate the
maybe because of Berrios.
Yeah, there you go. Very, very interesting. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Either way, you're right. Very, very or Berry. You're right, Cap. Number 3 for me is Mike White versus Skylar Thompson. I was actually shocked when you sent me your list and you didn't have what's on there.
I was thinking about it when I saw the graphics. Like, how did I forget about that?
Okay, this is my standpoint.
Because neither of them are going to play this year. That's why.
Well, yeah, I know. But this is another where, like interior linebacker 3, because of questions with one of the top guys, it matters, this battle, right? So with Mike White and Skylar Thompson, here's where I'm at. Skylar Thompson last year, when idiots were pushing, he's QB1, and I was saying, no. This year, he's got to make the 53, and next year, he's got to push for QB2. And we've heard, and it sounds like we're in the early stages of him pushing for QB2. I think Skylar Thompson is going to win this battle. I think he's going to make them regret even spending money on Mike White, his second year in this offense. I said last year when I drafted him, as long as he polishes certain areas of this game, and I've listed and gone over those multiple times, I really liked his upside in this offense. I think they're going to continue to develop him under Darrell Bevel. I think Skylar already looked good before the pads come on. I think he's going to look better. If Mike White's arm is giving people pause and there's not even pads on, be worried, okay? I think Skylar's going to win this. And the only way Mike White, I think, wins that QB2 is if he politics his way due to his contract. I think this is the year Skylar locks in QB2. And I think next year, continuing on the trajectory I've predicted, Skylar is going to be one of those. Skylar's going to turn into one of those guys where he could, if he could become a good trade asset, like we saw the Patriots used to turn over guys like Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo into assets that they could use in the draft.
Yeah, if I could just chime in, because I didn't put this on my list, but I think you're right. I actually think there could be some buyer's remorse with Mike White. And that's why when I say about next year's cap, I always say you could save $3.5 million by releasing Mike White, because I think Skylar's going to beat him out for sure. I think if anything significant happened to Tua early in the season that neither of these guys would be the quarterback, I could see them like maybe calling the Rams and saying, hey, what's Matt Stafford cost, right? Like let's bring a Stafford in. But I think for the purposes of QB2, look, man, Skylar took his lumps as a rookie last year, but he was a 7th-round rookie quarterback playing. And as the season got on, he got better. He needed to win a game against the Jets to get us to the playoffs by any means necessary, and he did it. And he went toe-to-toe with Josh Allen in a playoffs game, man. And, we already mentioned that Waddle had dropped a big ball in that game. That was a beautiful throw. I mean, I think Skylar Thompson is not only the backup just for now. I think this could be a long-term fixture at the backup position. Skylar Thompson, man, like if you find a backup quarterback to his caliber in the 7th round, that is a good draft pick. So I think that's one of the biggest battles to see, because I'll tell you what, I left that season thinking, Skylar Thompson intrigues me.
Yeah, the Skylar's the limit, baby.
Right.
Q says Cater Kohu versus Cam Smith. The reason why I didn't put it on there, Cater's a slot guy. Cam comes in as he's going to be
boundary.
He's going to be the primary boundary backup as well. I think Cater Kohu versus Nick Needham would be more of a battle, and I don't think that's going to be much of a battle because of where Nick Needham's health is, not necessarily talent-wise, and also we know the staff loves Cater Kohu. So number 2 here, I've got Devon A-Chain versus the veteran running backs. I can sneak Dalvin Cook in there, even if he's not on, because he'll fall into that category. And you got Isaiah Wynn versus Liam Eichenberg. Now, for me, Devon A-Chain versus the veteran running backs, where this comes from, I've said I think he's going to establish himself as one of the premier pass-catching backs in the NFL after year 1. I think, this is going to be a good battle. If he shows he's explosive, like how he has early on, if that trend continues and he continues to show that he could be a viable playmaker for this offense, he's just going to do himself a favor and win more snaps. And you know what? Because of his youth, but also because of the reliability Jeff Wilson Jr. and Raheem Mostert have shown us in the months of December and January, which is zilch, I think it's paramount for all of us fans that Devon A-Chain begin to either catch up quickly or try to separate himself in some ways from that group. Because if we don't have Dalvin Cook, I hope when we get into those December months, Devon A-Chain has established himself as the running back 1, and we are leaning on a guy like him. And because if we're leaning on him, that can help keep Mostert and Jeff Wilson healthy into those months, because clearly carrying full workloads into those months, whether it was with the Niners or here, have led to injuries for those guys. Now, you got Isaiah Wynn and Liam Eichenberg as 2, which is actually my number 1. Where are you at with that battle, Neil?
Well, one thing I'll say just real quick on the A-Chain, because I think you're 100% right. And I think I think when we get through the training camp, the biggest story in Miami Dolphin land is going to be how good Devon A-Chain looks. I think that is going to be the biggest story of all of training camp. And the only reason that Dalvin Cook isn't here is because Devon A-Chain has shown enough. And I can see the Dolphins not up in their offer, but potentially just saying, you know what, this guy's ready now. And so when everyone asks what's the leverage the Dolphins have in the Dalvin Cook situation, they got a guy that reminds me of Chris Johnson on their roster, who's a little bit tougher of an inside runner than Chris Johnson was. I saw how that played out in Tennessee. I wanted that guy on my team when we had to play against him. And if Dalvin Cook doesn't take the Dolphins offer that he has on the table, he might not have that on the table much longer, because Devon A-Chain is here. Now, the Eichenberg thing for me, man, is I'm not in on Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg anymore. I'm not going to let people fool me that many times, because it's happened more than once with each of these players. I think Isaiah Wynn is a above average to quality starting left guard in this league. And I just think him next to Terron Armstead with Connor Williams, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson is our best 5. And I like that Liam Berg's been putting in the work and getting stronger and all that good stuff. And I think he's a good depth piece that can probably play 5 positions along the offensive line if you need him to. But I want this to be a real battle. And if it's a real battle, I don't see Liam Eichenberg beating out Isaiah Wynn.
Either do I, and that's why I've got it at number 1 too, because I'm right there with you. And the only reason Austin Jackson is in this list because we know he's battling a jabroni. So what?
Yeah, Austin Jackson's going to start. He's
got a path, but one for me is Isaiah Wynn versus Eichenberg, because is Eichenberg going to get relegated as the backup, to Connor Williams and the backup to Isaiah Wynn. And hey, since Isaiah Wynn came over here, we've told everyone, hey, he's going to be getting a shot at left guard. Lo and behold, that's exactly what's happened. All of his snaps have happened at left guard so far. So, I'm right there with you. It's my number one battle because everyone wants to see it, but also everyone wants to see someone grab that position by the shorts and curls and really lock it down so we can get, whether it's short-term or long-term, get some kind of stability at left guard. You know what I mean? Especially between Connor Williams and Terron Armstead, because if we can get, I really believe that Belichick's starting to get into that realm of overrated. And, you look at the offensive line, it's not been the same since Dante Scarnecchia left. And Dante Scarnecchia was a huge fan of Isaiah Wynn, said last season, during the season, he believes not only can Isaiah Wynn still be salvaged, but he needed to get out of New England. And I really like Isaiah Wynn's prospects in this offense under this coaching staff. And, it's number one for me because that's a big answer we all want, even if it's for 2 or 3 years and it's in the building. And number one for you is Brandon Jones versus Deshaun Elliott, Neil.
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of Ravens being here in Baltimore, and I've watched Elliott on the field. And the thing that he oozes is that kind of thing I was talking about with Jevon Holland, that leadership. When he was a young rookie from 4th-round pick from Texas, he was out there with a bunch of veterans and a well-established Baltimore defense, but he was a vocal leader. Again, he was out there lining people up, but man, that dude comes downhill in a hurry. And around the line of scrimmage, he's a menace. He actually, against the run, reminds me a little bit of an old Dolphin named Rashad Jones. He also has the ability to make plays, man. And we all saw that clip of him lighting up Derrick Henry in the open field. But I think the gravity that how many people have not done that, you know what I mean? Like had that opportunity not to that. Now, this isn't me knocking on Brandon Jones because I think they're just such different players. They have different skill sets. I also think that Brandon Jones is going to, coming off a big injury, is going to take some time. I don't think he's fully back to the fluid athlete he was before the injury right away, week 1.
Agreed.
So I think I actually think it's a perfect battle because you'll probably see Brandon Jones start the season as a situational pass rusher and in the dime defense, right? And come off the edge and do the things that he does and cause havoc where the meat and potatoes of the safety position, playing against the run and helping, a pretty weak linebacking core against the run. I think Elliott's going to pay huge dividends. We don't have either of these guys under contract after this year, Reason. So it's going to be interesting to see, do any of these guys earn the next contract, or are the Dolphins going to go into a next year's loaded safety class with their eyes on another player? So I think these battles that we've covered are just really good. But like what you notice that I think is really cool overall about these is we have a franchise quarterback. There's so many positions that are just locked in with really good, elite players that like we're talking kind of about some of these positions, like the left guard position is obviously very important, starting safety, but like where it matters, we're really good, man. Like we have a really, really good roster. So like, I like that was a fun exercise to do though, man, because it starts to get you in that mindset. Like, what am I going to be watching in training camp? Right? Like what am I going to watch? And like that quarterback battle, that's 3rd and 4th quarter in preseason games, man. Like that gives you a reason to watch till the end. So
exactly.
And not only do the things that matter for this year, but they matter for the future, where like Skylar Thompson, him winning is better for the future of this team because he's making $800,000 a year and Mike White's making $4 million. Like that's a humongous difference when you're up against the cap next year and you have to make tough decisions. So that was fun.
Cap for Life says, you read my mind, Reason. I love that we have a contingency plan, but I really want to see what A-Chain has. I agree, Neil. Russell says, Ike and Trash and Austin missing in Action Jackson. And Cap for Life tells him, damn it, Russell, stay positive, man. Continuing on here, let's, a guy we've covered on this channel. We played the clip a couple weeks ago of him on this channel when he was throwing Dolphin stuff all over the ground. Dion Dawkins. Now, Neil, he's out here calling out Christian Wilkins on the herd. This is what he said yesterday.
The Dolphins as well. Wilkins is really good for them. Wilkins is a guy. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of Wilkins. trench battles, just trench battle stuff.
Be a talker.
Chirper, man. Chirper on the field, off the field is just a different dude, but chirper, but respectful. Like I respect ball, and there's a million guys. I don't think that they do.
So look at this. So Dion Dawkins, the guy who's out here going through stores, throwing our gear on floors,
merchandise that doesn't belong to him, that he hasn't paid for.
Exactly. Take away the disrespect to our team. There are employees at that job who got to go clean up his mess because he's disrespectful. And this guy's out here making millions of dollars a year. And these people that are cleaning up those messes aren't making $1 million a year. That tells you what kind of person this guy is. And he's got an issue, and he even admits, with Christian Wilkins being a respectful chirper, Neal. He even called him a respectful. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't like this guy because he's a chirper, but he's a respectful chirper? Have you ever heard that in your whole life?
No, but I got bad news for Dion Dawkins. He's going to have a bigger problem this year, and his name's Jaylen Phillips when he gets 2 sacks on him in a game. Like, I'm with you, though, man. Like, seriously, like, how you conduct yourself. Like, look, I actually think it's funny that Christian Wilkins is a chirper. I think we've needed that kind of energy, and we've never had. It's been a long time. I think Brian Cox comes to mind as a guy that we've had that does that. But, like, he's playing football. He's doing a game. He's, kind of putting his energy out on the football field. Like, him walking around stores and doing stuff like that, like what are you, 5 years old, dude? Like, what are you what a weird off season for the Buffalo Bills, man. Like, what are they drinking there? They want to downplay the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs situation, right? Cool. Like, I get it. Like, the media probably does overblow some of that stuff, but you have your starting left tackle going to the ESPYs in a suit with no shirt on. He's knocking clothes off racks, and like it's just a weird. I
can't wait till he gets punched in the mouth in the trenches, Neal. I know they're watching him, and he just keeps giving them billboard material. I know they all saw that video, and I know they saw this. I can't wait till these guys just give him the work in the trenches, Neal.
My God,
I just can't wait to see it, Neal. Final thoughts before we get out of here, and one of the things I want to set you up with on final thoughts is Dalvin Cook recently told Fox 9 in Minneapolis that he's enjoying free agency. He said the process is fun. You embrace it. If you don't want to be wanted by people, then something's wrong. As long as people want me, I'm good. I know I'm in the right spot, but going through the process has been fun. It's been different every day, waking up with a different schedule, just enjoying it. I think when it comes down to it, I'll just make the right decision. And, you got Jeff Darlington reporting. He still wants to get a little bit closer to training camp to really nail this down. We got word today that Saquon Barkley was offered less than what he'd make over the franchise tag over 2 years. He was offered, $19.5 million worth of guaranteed, but over 2 years on the franchise tag, you'd earn just over $22 million. So they offered him less than that. What are your thoughts before we get out of here? Because I know people want to think about latest on Dalvin Cook, because it really seems like he's just sitting back, throwing up his feet, and he's waiting until training camp.
Well, I think the running back market that's going to be available is going to really get crowded, because it's not just Saquon. There's Josh Jacob, who's threatened to hold out tomorrow now.
Yeah.
And, you put those 2 guys with Dalvin Cook, they're probably 3 of the top 7 running backs in this league, right? And what it just tells you.
What is it, July 16th for their deadline?
17th.
For 4 days.
So
Monday.
Here's what I know. I know that Dalvin Cook has an offer. I know the range that it's in. I know the gap. That's the difference. I don't think there's a real offer from Minnesota out there. I think Boomer Esiason was helping. I think Boomer was helping Dalvin and his agent put the target number out there to try to get the Dolphins to move up.
Which is the number I've been saying since the beginning.
And so I think that's where we are. I don't think he wants to be a Jet, or he would have been. I don't think he wants to be a Patriot, or he would.
And apparently Breece Hall recently came out, Neal, in the last 2 days in an interview and said he'll be ready to go for the start of the season.
Yeah, I think that Dalvin Cook's still going to be a Miami Dolphin. I'm at 82%. That's my official tracker. I went up a percentage from last week, and it's just because the longer this goes, I think it's more about Dalvin. I wish I had salespeople that worked for me in my career that worked as hard as Dalvin has tried to sell himself to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, every time I turn it on, it's him in his Miami high school uniform. It's his agent going on talking.
Did you hear that story that Darlington told, Neal? He said that a GM had told him that a quarterback kept coming to him and said, "Hey, I want this receiver. I want you to get my receiver." And he finally told him after a bunch of times, "Listen, if I wait 3 weeks from now, he's going to cost like 3 times less than what he costs right now. If I were to buy him right now, he's like, I'd be paying up the yin yang. But if I wait just 3 weeks, his price drops dramatically. And I think they're playing chicken, bro. They're
Right.
seeing like at this end of the day, Neil, we still haven't made a move for anyone else when we've got clear depth issues. And that tells you that they're still waiting for resolution.
Right, and they're playing chicken, but I honestly say this. I think the Dolphins have just as much or more leverage than Dalvin, and here's why. Because I think Dalvin Cook right now wants to be a Dolphin. And in your life and in your career, when you can control what you want to do, like I don't wake up and get to do what I want to do every day. I have to bust my ass to pay bills for a family, right? Like I don't have the ability to say this is where I want to go and what I want to do. He does. And he has an opportunity to go home and play under the lights in the city where he wants to be, right? The Dolphins have Devin Achane, and they have capable running backs behind them. They just drafted those. They just drafted Achane. They just signed those running backs. So, like, I think Dalvin makes that room better. But there's not like there's a line of people around the door trying to sign a running back right now. So, Dalvin's price, I think the Dolphins will eventually come up a little. But I think they're going to get him for $5 million with an incentive. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think that if you're Dalvin Cook, you got to look for the win-win. Like the Dolphins are the 3 teams that he's been rumored to have the best roster. I think they have the best odds to win. Yeah. Look, frankly, he just doesn't want to go to New York. I just think that the longer this plays out, it's more the Dolphins have the upper hand, and he's got 4 days. And I think it's still going to bleed out for a few weeks.
So do
because I don't think Dalvin's going to be in a rush to put on pads and practice. But like I think as long as the position of running back, right? We've seen his training; he's going to be in game shape. As long as he's on the roster by week 1, he can come in and play right away. So
I agree.
I think the resolution is that he's still going to be a Dolphin. I think we have to be patient, and I think you should be proud of your GM for not panicking and making a bad move. And I'm not saying paying Dalvin's a bad move, but if you can get him for 4 or 5, why pay him 7?
Yeah. I mean, the magic number for me has been 7, and I've said they've got to come in around 6 probably is the lowest. I could see 5 to 6 million range and then incentives to get them up to around 7 or 8. I could see that all happening. But hey, we will see as we get closer and closer to it. Always a good time, Neil. I appreciate you coming through. I appreciate all of y'all for coming through and enjoying us. Please smash the like button. Over 300 of you in the room. Smash that like button on the way out. I'll be back on the weekend, go over everything because there will be more news as it comes in, and then we'll be back next week. And when we come back next week, not only will the franchise tender signing period be over, but also, Neil, rookies will have reported. So we will see all y'all next week. Until then, thank y'all for joining in. Fins up all day, every day. Smash that like button, and we'll see y'all on the next one.